presenter is Sanaa Marlin. Sanaa is a senior biology major at VCU. Her name is Sanaa. She is a senior biology major at VCU with aspirations to become a veterinarian. Dedicated to succeeding in and out of the classroom, she has balanced her academic studies with competing in track and field. After earning her degree, Sanaa plans to pursue her vet tech certification, allowing her to gain hands-on experience in animal care. Before attending veterinary school at Stephen University, her presentation topic is Rethinking the Appendix, Evolution, Microbiome, and Medicine.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sanaa, and today I'll be presenting my research on rethinking the appendix, evolution, microbiome, and medicine. So what is the appendix, you might ask? The appendix is a small finger-like tube that is attached to the end of the cecum, which is a small pouch that is located in the lower right abdomen. So if you refer to the diagram, you will see that the cecum is at the beginning of the large intestine, where waste from the small intestine enters the digestive tract. The location is very significant because it is near the gut microbiome, and this shows a potential contribution to regulation of microbial populations within the gut microbiome. So appendicitis, what is it? Appendicitis is the inflammation of the appendix, and it's simply caused by any obstruction of the appendiceal lumen, which is just the lining of the appendix. Some common causes of the obstructions would be anything like heart and stool infections, cancers, appendiceal tumors, or growth. Any of these blockages can lead to acute appendicitis, which causes pain in the abdomen or inflammation. So this pain starts around your belly button, and then it moves gradually to where your appendix is actually located in the lower right part of your abdomen. And any delayed treatment can lead to your appendix rupturing, and then can lead to peritonitis and sepsis, things like that. It can be very life-threatening. So how can we cure or treat appendicitis? So we would use an emergency surgical procedure known as appendectomy, which is the removal of your appendix. There are two types of appendectomy. Open appendectomy is more invasive, and laparoscopic appendectomy is less invasive. So open appendectomy is about a 2 to 4 inch incision in your lower right abdomen, and the appendix is then removed through that incision, and recovery is roughly 2 to 6 weeks. And for laparoscopic appendectomy, it's less invasive. It's 1 to 3 incisions, 2 near your belly button and then 1 near your lower right abdomen. So a laparoscope is just a camera, a tiny camera, and it has surgical tools attached to it. And your physician is able to see what they're doing through that camera, so it helps guide the removal. So the laparoscope and those tiny surgical tools go through the incision near your belly button, and then the appendix is then taken out through this incision in your lower right abdomen. And recovery for the laparoscopic appendectomy is roughly 1 to 3 weeks. So the research questions that I had were, how does the appendix contribute to health and stability of the gut microbiome? 2 is, how does appendectomy affect the diversity and balance of the gut microbiome? And 3, what are the long-term effects of appendectomy on the gut microbiome composition and overall well-being? So some justification for this research would be, the appendix it was thought to be an evolutionary remnant. People thought that it was functionless, but in recent research, we now know that there is a potential relationship between the gut microbiome and the appendix. With that being said, we want to decrease unnecessary surgeries for acute and mild appendicitis, so we can preserve our gut's microbiome. What is the gut microbiome, you may ask? So it is a complex microbial community that is composed of bacteria, viruses, and fungi, as well as other microorganisms located in your gastrointestinal tract. Its key functions are immunity, metabolism, and pathogen defense. It also helps maintain the homeostasis, our body's homeostasis. And if anything is imbalanced, it does help restore those imbalances. Also, everything that you've eaten since a child has affected your gut's microbiome's composition. So this also helps you know, or aids in the understanding that everyone's gut microbiome does vary as far as what's in it. So it's kind of geared to what you need for your body, and what you eat does play a role in it. As well as any pre-existing conditions. Your body may have a pre-existing condition that requires your gut microbiome to do more of something and less of something else, depending on who you are. So how do we know that the gut microbiome and the appendix have a relationship? So through high throughput DNA sequencing, studies have shown that the usage of 16S ribosomal RNA help us uncover the identity and classification of bacteria. So 16X ribosomal RNA helps us uncover bacteria because not all bacteria is culturable, meaning that it cannot be grown in a lab. So the fact that you can take a sample of a bacteria and put it in a sequence that is conserved and not easily mutated is very useful. Based on the findings, we based on a study that I read, it has uncovered that 15 bacterial phyla, including taxa that are not native to the gut microbiome, were present. So this also shows that it uncovered some bacteria that we wouldn't have known otherwise. And the biofilm that are in our appendix help present things like C. difficile, which causes like diarrhea and will flush out that beneficial gut bacteria that we need. So the conceptual relationship between the appendix and the gut microbiome, as stated before, the appendix serves as a reservoir for beneficial gut bacteria to restore and repopulate the gut microbiome after any disturbances. Disturbances such as antibiotics, age, diet, infections, things like that. Also, the appendix has a high concentration of beneficial gut bacteria, and this also helps support microbial homeostasis. The appendix is also very rich in lymphatic tissue, which helps regulate the immune system and increase the survival rate of healthy microbes that we need. So, historical perspectives of the appendix. So this is a picture of Charles Darwin, and he's known for the theory of evolution by natural selection. So this theory simply means anything that was advantageous for a generation, whether it was a function or an organ or anything that helped them survive or increase survival rates, was kept for the next generation. So with that being said, during the Paleolithic era, we had a very high high diet in plants. So we ate a lot of plants, and with that being said, we used the cecum in our appendix to help digest all of that cellulose. And over time, as our diets became more modern and diverse, we no longer needed our appendix or cecum for that function. And over time, our cecum did shrink in size due to it not being used for that function anymore. This also brought up the idea that the appendix was an evolutionary remnant, meaning that we no longer needed it for that particular thing to digest cellulose. So we thought that we didn't need that at all, which also increased the rate of appendectomy because people thought it was functionless. So a shift in perspective. So as stated before, the cecum did become significantly smaller due to the evolution of our diet. Also, research proposes that the appendix is not a vestigial organ, and it does contribute to the gut microbiome balance and support in immune system health, as well as its being rich in lymphatic tissue aids in its role in immune function. So what are the differences in appendicitis between men and women? So men are more likely to have appendicitis due to the location of their appendix. So women have, our reproductive organs protect our appendix. So our fallopian tubes and our ovaries kind of shield our appendix from blockages and obstructions, whereas men don't have that, so they're more susceptible to certain blockages, such as heart disease and other things mentioned earlier. Also, a change in our lifestyle, so our dietary patterns as well as our lifestyle do play a role in the likelihood of getting blockages or appendicitis. Also, men have an increase in inflammatory reactions due to, I believe it's testosterone. So here I have a chart, it might be hard to see, but I have a morbidity and mortality table, and this was taken from a 5-year-long observational study done at a teaching hospital in Iraq, and it ranges from ages 21 to 30 and then 31 to 40. So the morbidity rate basically highlights negative appendectomy as well as the significant risk of infection, obstruction, and septicemia, whereas the mortality rate table underscores negative appendectomy. So basically what a negative appendectomy is if you had any type of if you had any symptoms of like pain or anything that was similar to appendicitis, they would go in for appendectomy. And if they seen that your appendix was healthy, they were still taking it out anyway. So it was considered like an unnecessary surgery. And I chose this chart because it depicts how frequent appendectomies, negative appendectomies were being done. Also, as you can see here from the tables, it does show that women had a more increased rate of mortality and morbidity due to negative appendectomy because women have gynecological complications that mimic appendicitis. So things like an ectopic pregnancy or like your like a ruptured cyst, things like that can mimic the same things as appendicitis. So negative appendectomies were being done because of that as well. So overall, out of the studies that I read, about 70% of them had a success rate using a method called antibiotic therapy, which simply means that for acute and mild appendicitis, we're trying to promote the use of medicine instead of surgery. But on the contrary, it does have a high recurrence rate, so the likelihood of it coming back is significantly high. So that's something that we don't want. But with that being said, for more complicated cases of appendicitis, appendectomy is still the go-to. So some limitations for this research or studies that I looked at were the significance of the study. So the ones that I looked at were fairly small. Like the one I looked at on the table previously was from Iraq. So antibiotic therapy is another limitation is the fact that it's on a case-by-case basis. So it's not something I could just prescribe to you because you have appendicitis. So based on pre-existing conditions, the time of your diagnosis, or your demographic, that can determine whether you are suitable for antibiotic therapy. So another limitation would be finding who is going to benefit most from this therapy. Also, the morbidity and mortality rate show a low risk of mortality, but there is a risk of increased risk of morbidity, so wound infection and sepsis. So the aftercare of appendectomy is also a concern. So if we're going to continue to do them, we need to make sure that we're informing those who are needing them on the aftercare. Also, antibiotic treatment does definitely need more research based on what I studied because we don't want to encourage something that is going to return. We don't want to encourage the use of antibiotic therapy that is potentially could return. You still have appendicitis. So, in conclusion, basically, antibiotic therapy is something that does need to still be researched. It is something that we still want people to be informed on. So even if the recurrence rate is high, it still may be a demographic that this does benefit. This still may be beneficial to somebody based on what meets their needs. Also, again, future research. We just need more long-term and more extensive studies to help us underscore antibiotic therapy and who exactly is it. So for my acknowledgments, I would like to thank Dr. Davis Lewis, who wasn't able to be here tonight, as well as my advisor, Dr. Compton, who believed in me along the way and made this research journey enjoyable. Also, I would like to thank my parents for their support in allowing me to even be here to conduct this research.
What did you find out with the immune response after having the appendectomy done? Because,
So it was on a case-by-case basis. So based off what I studied, there was an increased rate in people who had a longer time in recovering from certain diseases such as cancers or things like that due to their gut microbiome being disturbed. And with the appendix being removed, unfortunately, there was a significant loss in beneficial bacteria that was needed that could have aided in just immune function.
Makes sense. Just like the splenectomy, similar to response as a splenectomy. The other question I had, what you was talking about, there was an increase in men and the estrogen was a protection, what did you find out with women that were postmenopausal? Did their increased rate of having appendicitis increase also, since they no longer had the protection?
Actually, as far as people who were like menopause, I did not look exactly into that in particular, so I'm unsure, but I would get back to you on that.
So given, excluding the negative epilepsy, because, you're removing healthy bodies, so that doesn't mean we're gonna get right. But given the risk of the recurrence of appendicitis versus the risks of having a disturbed microbiome, can you just kind of speak to how you would balance that?
So, based on what I researched, they're trying to highlight the fact that disturbing your gut microbiome is just as bad as keeping it's just as bad as getting appendectomy. So they're saying, depending on who you are, it may be more beneficial to take this antibiotic therapy versus having appendectomy to disturb your gut microbiome, because based on what I've seen, people were affected, they were affected long term for the disturbance of their gut microbiome.
I don't mean this to sound good, but could we just eat some more yogurt? Like, now that we are aware of this issue, do you know if there's been studies in trying to replace that microbiome artificially?
I actually did not see if they were trying to replace it artificially. I do not.
Yeah, you said that the earlier days, the function of the appendicitis is to process the cellulose, right? And that I'm reading the more plant.
Right.
So now still the animals will take the plants, right, and eat the plants, right? So do you think this appendicitis still have the function in animals?
Yes, I do. Also, because
No,
of the,
hurry.
like, natural selection, like, if you, if it's advantageous still in animals, like, let's say cows or something, if it's still advantageous, I do think that it still is used for that function, yes.
Does this support evolution then?
In a sense, I think that it does.
Yeah, on that same vein, like, how did you get the evidence that our sedum, or whatever it's called,
Cecum.
is larger
Oh,
than our ancestors?
so based on studies, and also Jimmy Charles Darwin played a big role in that, they said that our sequel was much larger, that it had to be they assumed that it had to be based off of how much cellulose we were digesting, or had to be digested.
Had they dissected any bodies to find out that that was actually true?
I did not see that personally.
Animal who eat plants has.
Yeah, but I'm saying, you look back then, you said our diet was more with cellulose, was there evidence of that, and they dissected and found out that the cecum was enlarged compared to ours now?
That was actually a great topic. I like the way you mentioned that it helps to prevent people from getting C. diff or sleeping deficit. Have you come across the cause of appendicitis and what type of possible antibiotic that can be used?
So what is the medication that they would prescribe for the antibiotic therapy?
The cause of it and the possible antibiotic.
So what's the cause of appendicitis, and
Yeah.
also what medication are we applying? Okay. So the cause of appendicitis, of course, is blockage, so any obstruction of the appendiceal lumen, so the lining of your appendix. And some medications that they are prescribing is ceftriaxone, that's what I say, and also metronidazole. And that one is, those medications are used because they target not only anaerobic but also anaerobic bacteria.
And ciprofloxacin gram-negative.
Why didn't you look for research in the U.S.?
So based off what I've read about appendicitis in the United States, it definitely showed an increase in like adolescents and pediatrics. So they had a more focus on children, and that's not who it affects. So based off of research, I found that the demographic is 21 to 40-year-olds. So I wanted to find a place that did extensive research there. So when I found the 5-year observational study, I chose those charts because they have the most significant data. Yes.
Have you found any information about a genetic relationship between the microbiome and your genetics?
I do know that your genetics does play a role in like the composition of your gut microbiome. So I know that between person to person is different, and then that can affect your, how, well you can fight against pathogens or your metabolism and
So I know you were saying that appendicitis is caused by a blockage. Can you kind of explain what can cause that blockage and what symptoms that a patient will possibly present if they have appendicitis based off of other things that may have been diagnosed as appendicitis?
So one of the most common ways that people get appendicitis is through, it's called fecalitis. So like these small pockets of your stool being blocked. So that's one of the most common ways. And then the first sign of it is that pain near your vertebra. That's where it starts. It started there, and then over time, during prolonged treatment, or at first you're probably like, oh, this hurts, like I'm not sure what it is, but then it starts to move gradually to that lower right part of your abdomen. So.
I mentioned something about mimicking the pain for female, because sometimes we use NSAIDs for pain, and that's one of the things that is actually not recommended for appendicitis, to take any pain medicine or anti-inflammation, so they mask the pain and otherwise exclude and cause problems.
We got one more.
No more questions? Thank you very much.